And then carry some kind of shelter with you, even on day hikes. I always have a shelter. Now this is the least expensive. We use these in the classes. This is just a $20, they used to call them Grabber space blankets. Grabber was the company. I don't know who the company is now that does them, but you'll see these in a box at REI. You'll see them on Amazon. What I've done to mine is, because I use this at classes, I've taken out the grommets because that's the place that fails, and I put in 3 layers of Gorilla Tape and put in a new grommet, and 5 years later, you know, all the classes, it's still going strong. So this, the downside to this one is, and this one's reflective too, it's a little heavy, but they make stuff. What's your budget? This is 20 bucks. You want one out of Dyneema, which is a super, super light material. That's gonna run you, my Dyneema tarp is a little bigger than this, but it weighs like half as much. This is 5x7, my Dyneema tarp's like 9x10. It was $300. What do you wanna spend? You know, where are you going? Then there's a new fabric out that's about somewhere in between that's almost as light as Dyneema. So we have, what are we doing? We have personal shelter, which was that poncho that you saw. And then we have shelters for cover. This will be an emergency shelter for cover because it's only 5x7. So let me open it up for you guys and show you how I would do this. So, you okay to grab one end of it? So grab about, go ahead and grab that end. And grab, can you guys all see this okay? So, and grab about this equal with me and there you go. So what I do, if I'm gonna have a fire, this is gonna be down low, the back's gonna be staked to the ground, and it's gonna be kind of a lean-to thing, and then this will be a little lip over it. Okay, and this is where you need to learn some knots, you know, basic knots and how to put in stakes and things like that. If I can't have a fire, then I'm gonna make an A-frame, like a pup tent. So just hold that in the middle so it'll be down the ground and kind of spread out like an A-frame, kind of, you know, that kind of deal. So that's what I would do with this. Now this is my emergency cover. If I expect, thank you, if I expect that I'm gonna be out there and I'm tarping for the night or something, I wouldn't have something like this. I'd have a real tarp, a much larger tarp. But for just having an emergency tarp, and if your budget only allows for 20 bucks, then this is what you want. And I always have people, when we start to do some of the classes, I have them put some stakes in the ground, and you guys have probably all done it, right? You take the stake, you hold it, and you do that. And one thing I like to teach, unrelated to survival, is if you miss, that really hurts. Okay, so I want you to try this at some point when you're camping. Just remember I'm showing you how to do this. Take your hand and hold your stake like that. If you miss, that doesn't hurt hardly at all compared to hitting your knuckles or something like that. So try that sometime. So that's the different shelters. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to talk to you guys about with shelters. So yeah, just decide, you know, do you want to spend 20 bucks? Get that, it's fine, it's just heavy. Carry some stakes with you, and then carry the cordage to string it across 2 trees to work your little lean-to, and then to stake out the 4 corners. Now, with that, the one thing I didn't show you guys, let me bring it back again because I think it's kind of important, is I would stake down the back completely. If I'm gonna have a fire, I would have that little kind of awning type thing. But if I don't have a fire, I'd make the A-frame like I showed you. Okay, that's for a winter shelter where you want to stay warm. Summertime, we talked about Arizona. Turn it over. If you have a reflective one, let the sun reflect away from you, and instead of tacking it down at the very back to the ground, use some cordage so it lifts up about 4 feet, and you'll get that breeze going through if there's any wind at all. Don't stop it from going through. So I like, right now, just for my classes, I use just regular utility cord. I don't like 550 paracord. I use it for other things, but I don't like it because it stretches. And you don't want stretch, you want your shelter nice and taut, you want your ridgeline nice and taut. But for my personal use, I love the reflective cord from Lawson Enterprises, L-A-W-S-O-N. Lawson Klein, he makes rope. It's a rope manufacturing company, and it's reflective. I use the 2.5 millimeter. That's my favorite thickness of it. 3 is a little thick, a little heavier. 2 is a little thin. It can cut your tarp. But yeah, if you guys need good cordage, and I think, I think REI sells some reflective cordage. Lawson has all the different colors, and I use red for my ridge line, and I use orange for my tie outs, just so I know what everything is. But for my regular classes that I teach, I'm just using plain old utility cord. You can see it's pretty beat up, pretty dirty, but utility cord doesn't have a stretch, and that's easily gotten pretty much anywhere. But I would advise against paracord just because of the stretch. I would also put my adjustable knots, for you guys that know, like the taut line hitch and those kind of knots. I would put those at my shelter corners rather than at my stakes. For years and years, I put them at my stakes because, I don't know, because that's what I did, because I wasn't very smart about it. And then one of my good friends, he actually came to one of my classes a few years back, and he's like, why don't you put your adjustable knot at the tarp? That way if it's raining, you just reach out and tension it, you don't get wet. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take credit for that, buddy. So yeah, so I always learn stuff from my students too. It's great, to share knowledge. So learn the adjustable notch, taut line hit, adjustable grip hitch, whatever it is, and you can tension up. Because a lot of times the tarp you'll get it tense, and the tents do it too, that'll relax. The nylon relaxes, you gotta retension it. With tents, you don't have much choice, because you gotta do your tensioning knot at the stake normally. So that's different shelter methods. I don't wanna run over time, because I know we wanna stay on track. Fire, let's talk fire real quick. So we talked a little bit about fire safety. You definitely want to be in a position where you're not making a fire if it's dangerous to do so. Okay, you want to be making fire if it is safe to make fire. So what are the ways to make fire? My number one method for a survival situation would just be a lighter. A Bic lighter. These things last for pretty much forever. They do really, really well. I have one in my pocket when I'm hiking all the time. Take off, there's a little metal guard that goes over the top, a child safety thing. Take that off, because if your hands get cold, it makes it harder. It's designed for kids because their skin's tighter and they can't work it, but you might be cold and you might need that extra, or maybe your thumb's broken, you have to do it with your finger. Take off that little child safety cap, and then you have the Bics are better, than the Zippos. Open flame is always number one. You want to have open flame. An empty Bic. Bic runs out of fuel, still creates a spark. You can still get a fire going with a spark. So we'll talk a little bit about that. The Bics, not great at high altitude. If it's really cold out, you're going to have to hold it in your hand, let it warm up. Even probably in the 40-degree range, 30-degree range is not, even above freezing, these things the butane doesn't work, doesn't gasify. So hold it in your hand for 5 minutes and it's going to be fine. You can use it again. So you'll be fine with a Bic lighter. Then from lighters, then we have matches. These are a company called UCO. Some people say UCO. These are stormproof matches. Anybody here ever use stormproof matches? So you know what they're like, right? We can light a match in here. Maybe. Works well, but no, it's just, so stormproof match, put it in water, and that's going to put it out, or maybe not. That's why they call it stormproof matches, right? Till it gets to the bottom there, you can't blow it out, you can't put it out with water, and that's a stormproof match. So if you're going to carry matches, carry stormproof matches. They come in these little tiny containers too. Same company, UCO. This is what I put in my survival kit because it's so small. But if you're lighting fires with matches all the time, you can get, this size here. They have regular ones. So that's my number 2 after a lighter, might be a match. Number 3 is going to be a fire steel. If you're familiar with these things, they make lots of sparks and we can get a fire going pretty easily. Let me show you the fire steel. Oh, before I go on to the fire steel, let's go back to the lighter. So it's important, besides fire safety, to know how to start a fire, right? Let me get this going. Hold on a second. How much time have you guys got? So understand how to light a fire. You got to go up through the gears. You start in first gear. So the way I teach it is pencil lead size sticks. You want dry sticks. You don't want to pick stuff up off the ground. It's usually wet. Go to the trees, look for dead branches. If they snap, they're usually dry. Get the pencil lead size first. Next is pencil size, thumb size, and then wrist size and bigger is your fuel. So you get your pencil lead size, a little pile, you get that going. Once that's above the sticks, then you put on your pencil size. And when that gets above the sticks, your thumb size. Practice making a fire. Put in your fire pit, lay down some sticks. Then build your fire on top. Why? What do we need for fire? Heat, fuel, and oxygen. Let the oxygen flow through the bottom. That's going to help get your fire going. So learn how to build a fire. That's really critical. People want to know all these cool tricks on how to get a fire going with different methods, but learning how to build the fire is really, really critical. When you have the real small stuff, bless you, where that log's not going to light, but this little pencil size, pencil lead size piece is going to light from a lighter. So that's first off, is knowing how to build the fire. We do have, let me show you the spark method in a second. Fresnel lens, this fits in your wallet. I always have one in my wallet. Two most important things I carry in my wallet is going to be a Fresnel lens and crushed red pepper. Got to have that stuff on my pizza. Fresnel lens, like a magnifying glass, right? Just, you can put it over a tinder bundle. It's not going to work at night. It's not going to work when it's overcast. So that's a way to start a fire. It's a renewable resource. But when do we need a fire? When it's cold, when it's overcast, when it's night. So it's fun. It's a fun thing to learn how to do. So let me go back to the fire steel. So I think these are really, really good to have. Learn how to use it. Buy a couple of them. Learn the method to make the sparks. There's two types. There's the type like this that makes sparks. See all those sparks? There's that type. And then, let me see if I have the other type with me, just so you guys can see the difference, because a lot of people don't talk about it. And I'll talk about how to use it. Oh, here's some more stormproof matches if you really want to impress your friends. Same company. But look at the size of these guys. So, yeah, those are fun for home use and stuff like that. The fire pit at the house. I have another, okay, so let me show you the difference. I'm going to show you how to use, probably most of you know how to use this thing, but so this one, instead of the sparks, has little molten balls of steel that come out. So look at the difference. See how that works? So it's not as concentrated of a spark, but if you have tinder that's not great, this can come in handy, this type. So there's a hard surface and a soft surface, and so be aware of that when you buy one of these. I still like this one the best. This is by a company called Light My Fire. They're not as popular these days, I think, because there's so many Chinese knockoffs and stuff now. But this company is a Swedish fire steel. This one also does more of the kind of the spark, but it does a little bit of the hot molten balls of steel too. This one's cool because it comes with a scraper, emergency whistle in there, which we'll talk about in a little bit with signaling. So these are good. Two methods, in case you weren't aware. Scrape forward, or keep your scraper stationary and pull this back. Okay, why would you do that? I ask myself that question all the time. Hold on a minute. Show you guys. So when I teach the scouts, I love teaching them, with the cotton balls. I'm going to show you guys the difference in these in a minute. But what happens is, because they're going forward and they're not quite getting the spark yet, they're not used to the pressure you need to get that spark, then they're like doing this. And I'll see them like a half a mile down there chasing their cotton ball. And I'm like, okay, for you guys, I want you to keep this stationary and pull back, and you can get it lit that way. But this is just a cotton ball. So again, I'm trying to save you guys money. Get one of these, get two of these so you can practice with one. But if I take some Vaseline and get some petroleum jelly, it doesn't have to be the Vaseline brand. And I know a lot of you guys know this trick already, but for the people that don't, and also it's fun for me to do this, I'm just going to rub that into the cotton ball. You can do 8 or 10 of these and put them in a little Ziploc baggie and take them with you on your trips. And they all compress down really, really well. And then you have a great source to get your fire going. So I'm just going to fluff this up. I used to tell people, show my age, put a bunch of them into a 35 millimeter film canister You know, when was the last time we saw a 35 millimeter film canister? They're not around too much anymore. I think film's making a comeback though from what I'm seeing. Any case, so lighter was an open flame, right? Match was an open flame. I can go directly to my kindling, which is the pencil lead size. When we're doing spark-based stuff, whether it be a fire steel or an ember-based thing from a friction fire, we need what's called a tinder bundle. And I have a tinder bundle up there by my bow and drill set. It's just like a bird's nest of dried grasses and things. You got to work up through the steps. But let me show you the cotton ball real quick and just show you the difference. I'm going to light up the one with the Vaseline first. So get the Vaseline off my hands. So I'm going to light up this one first. And that one has got the Vaseline. And look at the difference in the heat produced. And then not just the heat, the amount of time. You want time. You want to get now from this. What do we want to put on top of this? Our pencil lead size sticks. And then let that go, and then our pencil size. But to me, there's a big difference between the two. Plain old cotton ball, yeah, it'll work, but I want more heat. I want to get those little sticks going. So you can buy, they have all kinds of stuff. This is one that I just discovered I thought was really cool. You can buy this if you want. Fast fire stick. You can buy that on Amazon. And that actually burns even better than the Vaseline cotton ball, but you don't need to spend the money. You know, I mean, how long's that been going? So that's going to give you a lot of time to start building your fire. So that's really important to know about. So use that. Let me. Just like a glob. I don't even know what you would call it, but yeah, tip of the finger. Just put like a little mound and then just massage it in. Obviously, the more Vaseline, the longer it's going to go for. There's even little tricks like putting it into a piece of aluminum foil and folding it, and you pull out the wick and you have a little candle for a while. So I'm going to let this burn, but I'm going to put this on the ground so we don't burn John's table. I'm going to let that go. Then there's, so that's called a fire steel. Some people call it a ferro rod. Ferrocerium is the mish metal that's in there. Some people call it flint and steel. You know, the flint in your lighter is the same thing as this. However, real flint and steel is not that, and this is real flint and steel here. This is how the mountain men made fire. And I'm just gonna show you guys, I'm not gonna go to flame because this is a spark, this is an ember based, and this would have to go into a tinder bundle and that'll smoke up the whole place. So they take the metal, can you guys see those small sparks? And they hit those small sparks onto a piece of charred cloth, put that into a tinder bundle, boom, you have fire. Great, you know, I wouldn't count on it for survival. I mean, it's fun, I carry them. You know, you can kind of play like you're a mountain man or something because that's what they used. And then the other method, I was going to show you guys that's really popular. Let's see, I think I have it here. Oh, this one. This also is a spark-based method that's going to have to go into a tinder bundle again. And if we were outside, I'd be doing all kinds of fires for you guys, but we're inside and I can't smoke up the room because once you go to a tinder bundle, it smokes. So this is steel wool. This is what's called the 4-aught, the 4 zeros. It's the finest steel wool, I guess. 9-volt battery. Some people like this method of making fire. Put that into a tinder bundle, instant fire. You know, just hit that in a couple spots. That's going to go into a tinder bundle and you're going to have your fire very quickly from that. What's the problem with that? Well, what if your battery's dead? So I kind of depend on, I like to show these. There's another one with chemicals. It's a lot of fun to do, the potassium permanganate and glycerin. What's that? Only battery and wool, or is there another way to use that battery? Like if you took it out of one of your devices? You could do, yeah, there's battery. Again, we go back to stuff that's not available as much anymore, but the foil, you know, the foil gum wrappers, some gum still comes with like a foil wrapper, not just paper only. You can make that real super thin and then that can light up with the battery, or a real thin piece of wire will get hot, but you'd have to have your tinder wrapped around it. But I'm just gonna try and get some smoke, and just so you guys have an idea of how this works. So that's how you do a bow and drill, and you see it smoking on its own. So I have an ember, I would transfer that ember to a tinder bundle, and then it's all done. Let me take the ember out and show you guys.
And you just have to blow on it? Or?
In the tinder bundle, you blow on it, it makes a ton of smoke.
Yeah.
But there's the ember, if you guys can all see that. Ember's going. Take your time because it has to solidify a little bit. And once I put that into a tinder bundle, I can blow that into a flame, and this is what a tinder bundle looks like. It gets super smoky, so I'm not gonna do it, guys, but basic kind of bird's nest deal. Just some dried grasses, inner bark of certain trees, cottonwoods, things like that. But it's not, once you learn how to do it, it's not a hard process. I mean, it can be. I can't say I have a 100% success rate with it, but I have a pretty good success rate with it. So I'm going to put this back over here so you guys can see it.
Did the ember come from just the wood, or
Yeah.
did you put something in it?
No, just the wood. Both the bottom hearth board and the spindle create the ember. So I'm going to leave this here. You guys can take a look at it afterward. If somebody wants to give it a go afterward, that's great. But I want to move on because I don't want to miss anything. So fire, different ways to set a fire, different ways to do a fire lay, from the teepee to the log cabin. I simply just kind of crisscross sticks. Don't bunch them up too much because you need the oxygen flow through. Just crisscross some sticks. There's other methods. There's chemical methods. There's compression like a fire piston. We can go on and on with that kind of stuff. But I think you guys have the idea, and we're going to run out of time if I don't get moving a little bit. All right. So like I mentioned, you guys using learning the knots for your shelters and stuff. So let's get on to signaling for rescue. That's our next thing. Okay. 3 types of signaling you should know about: audio, visual, and electronic. All right. So audio is typically going to be a whistle. So the whistle's good. What's recommended and such, and you don't have to go by my recommendations, but whatever you like, is going to be a plastic P-less whistle. Metal whistles, if it's really, really cold, can stick to your lips because it's metal. The little P inside there, like the little referee P thing, that little thing can freeze up and not spin. But this one has there's no P in there. It's P-less, and it's plastic. It's really loud. I don't want to blow it too loud in here. So what are we doing? Search and rescue. We're signaling 3 blasts. They'll return with 2 blasts if they hear you. But it's just something to know about. So signaling for rescue is going to be signal a whistle. You can also, let me see if I even have one here. Give you guys some homework. Go onto YouTube and learn how to make a whistle out of a soda can, because we know there's never any junk in the woods, right? I usually do better than that. Well, anyway, you can make a whistle out of a 7-Up, well, any kind of soda can, doesn't matter what the brand is, or acorn cap. A little acorn cap. Okay, I think that's how Native Americans signaled for rescue, with the acorn cap. So, learn how to do, but carry a whistle, same kind of deal. You may know how to do that stuff, but carry a plastic whistle, a P-less whistle. Okay, so for audio, we've got the whistle. For visual, we have signal mirrors. I suggest the mirror with the retroreflective grid inside. That grid, you see this in the middle? Actually, this way too. You can see a red grid inside there. That gives you an aiming point. So what happens is, you got to get one of these in practice, and most of them have it'll be a white dot. This one does a red dot, and it gives you a representation of the sun, and then you just move that little dot that's on this grid to exactly where you want to hit, and it's perfect. I mean, it hits precisely where you want. Other method is simple. Put the sun to your back, or I'm not the sun. Put the sun to your front. Do a little V like a gun sight, and do that. I don't know if this spotlight. Yeah, you guys over here can see, right? See that? The spotlight's picking it up here. But you make a V, and then you put your signal. You put your little light right in the middle of the V, and then move it. Who are we signaling to? We can signal to airplanes. We can signal to some lost, or a hiker on a ridge if we're lost, or if we're hurt, especially, right? Whistle, signal to hikers. We're not signaling to airplanes, obviously, with a whistle. But with these, we're signaling to small aircraft, search and rescue aircraft, helicopters. Don't signal to jets, jumbo jets. They don't know what it is. They don't care. Honestly, all the pilots I've talked to, you know what, they think it's a solar panel. They think they're seeing a solar panel, if they're even looking out the window. And typically they're not. Once they're leveled off in flight, these guys are very sensitive to the rays up being so high. They're pulling their seat back. They've got a screen that comes down, and they're not spending a lot of time looking out the window for anything. So search and rescue and small aircraft is who you're signaling to with these. So audio and visual, there's other things like smoke bombs and flares. I don't really get into that because I don't carry those things. But probably the most important thing you guys can carry is going to be an electronic device, a PLB, personal locator beacon. I am not a fan of the Spot. I don't recommend the Spot. I like the Garmin InReach. They have the Mini now, a real small one, if you guys have the Mini. I have the Zoleo for myself, mostly because, you know, I make fires by rubbing sticks together. I'm not a technical guy. They said this is easier to figure out, so I went with the Zoleo. But the InReach, people think it's wonderful, and it's the Garmin, so it's like a quarter the size. It's tiny. What's that? They just did recently. I haven't heard a lot about it, and I don't want to recommend it until I know more about it. But obviously, yeah, when you see that, it's real small. It's a real small one. Motorola came out with their own. So look for this. You know, the Spot uses a different satellite system than the other ones do. But this is the ACR. This is what I started with, because these two, the Garmin and the Zoleo, and I believe the Motorola, you all have to do like a cell phone plan, a certain amount per month, but it's two-way communication. So you can use your phone as a keypad, and you can communicate back and forth to people, send text messages. So you can give them more details if you need rescue also. So it's really nice to have that. But for years and years and years, I was too cheap to do the monthly plan, and I don't blame people if they don't. This one is called, it's a company called ACR, and ACR mostly dealt with boaters for a long time. So if somebody's at sea, they have an emergency, they're using ACR devices. So you can be sure that these are going to be reliable. These use a good satellite system as well. The Spot's the only one that uses some other satellite system. I'm not familiar with it, but I haven't heard good things. I had a Spot over 15 years ago. I didn't like it. It didn't work a lot of the time. But the ACR works really well, but it's one way. You have a problem, you put up the antenna, you push the button, you have no way to know what's going on. With the other ones, Garmin, Zoleo, they'll communicate with you via your phone if your phone's still working, and if it's not, you still have the SOS button. And that's what you really want. You know, you want rescue to be coming for you, and that's one of the reasons we talked earlier about why people are rescued so quickly anymore, is because of a lot of these electronic devices. So that's signaling. Let me see if I was going to tell you guys about anything else. Oh, on the ground, create contrast. Okay, so if you're trying to get planes to see you, search and rescue to see you, you want to create some kind of contrast. So, you know, brown rocks against a grass field, those kind of things. How about signal fires? Signal fires, you get a fire going and you put vegetation, live vegetation, it's going to send up white smoke. If you're in Alaska and it's all white, that white smoke isn't going to be great, right? So we burn tires and rubber and make black smoke. Contrast your environment. That's super, super important. Contrast and movement, right? So you talked about the reflector. If you get that blanket that we showed you and you get that in an area where it's ruffling and stuff, that's going to be something they're going to be able to spot pretty easily. This is something I really think is critical. You just take a little bit off and roll it into a little ball. This is flagging tape. This is a couple bucks at the hardware store. This is, if you go out and you say you're lost and you signaled for rescue, and all of a sudden you see the planes come over and you signal, you wave to them, they've seen you. But you know from your location, it's going to take 6 hours for people to get to where you are. If they're not evacuating you by helicopter, they're going to take a long time to get to you, and you want to go to your shelter, but you signal to them in an open field and your shelter's way over there. Just put these up on the branches, and this is the search and rescue. What's going to happen is search and rescue, you signal to the plane, whoops, it's still working, sorry. You're signaling to the plane here, search and rescue marks that spot, but you go to your shelter. Where's search and rescue going to go when they get there? To the exact spot they saw you, the coordinates. Now they're going to look around. First thing they do is look around, do a 360, And if they see this hanging, waving in the trees with the breeze, oh, they go that way. Then you have another one. You direct them right to your shelter.
How would you do that though? Like I'm expecting if you're calling search and rescue, your two legs broken in a ditch somewhere.
Not necessarily. You might be lost. You might be sick.
Just go backwards, start
Right.
walking,
So if you do need to guide them to where you are, you're going to use something like this. But yeah, if you've got a broken leg and you can't move very well, but there is a chance, you got to get out. You've got to get some kind of shelter going, and a lot of times you're going to have to get to an open field somehow. And with a broken leg, that's a different story. That might be a little bit tougher. But if you're lost, we're talking about lost hikers especially, you've made that shelter like we talked about, but you're kind of away from the open field. You don't want to be in an open field. It's just a way to direct them over to you. Let me see what else I wanted to tell you guys about here. Signal fires, just like a whistle, 3 of anything. 3 fires in a row, 3 fires in a triangle, all mean I need help. So 3 is the universal distress symbol. When they come out to get you and they hear your 3 blasts on your whistle, they're going to give you the 2 blasts, and you just continue to do the 3 until you have visual contact with search and rescue. Let's see. Oh, real quick, let me give you guys, okay. Spot uses the global star system. They have 48 mini satellites. InReach uses the Iridium. They have 77 satellites. Zoleo uses the same Iridium, 77 satellites, and ACR uses StarSat with 70 satellites. So you can see that they've got kind of the Spot outnumbered, but again, I'm not a big fan. Some people are. That could work. Other thing that would work besides that flagging tape dangling would be like rock cairns. You know how you see them on trails, 3 rocks piled up, and you can lead search and rescue to you that way. We talked a little bit about sleep. That's the other priority. Water. Let me get into water a little bit with you guys. 3 days without water. The time of year is going to be really dependent on how much you carry. The environment is going to be dependent on how much water you carry. But you definitely want to make sure you carry enough to get you to the next water stop if it's reliable. So how do we deal with water? So if we find water, let's talk about how to find it first. How do we find water if we don't have it? Couple things. We talked about tracking earlier. You can track the animals if you're good at tracking. Most animals will go to a water source at least once a day. So look at that. Climb to a high spot. Look down for the green belt. The rich green vegetation is going to be typically where there is water. There's also going to be good woods there for friction fire. There's also going to be good medicinal plants. It's really a good area to get to. But you can collect water. How about early morning? If it's been a little bit moist at night, the grass, the vegetation has water. Tie a couple bandanas to your ankles or just reach down and sop it up and wring that into a glass and your Nalgene bottle or whatever, and you have water. So that's one way to get it. Transpiration bag we talked about a little bit. A lot of ways to get water, but you want to purify it, make sure it's safe to drink. You can boil it. If you have a metal or titanium cup, some kind of metal cup is good. Filter. The Sawyer filters are probably the most popular out there. Everybody loves the Sawyer squeeze. I've just got the mini here for the class, but I carry the regular Sawyer squeeze myself. That's a good thing to have. What's that?
The Be-Free Canine.
Be-Free is I have both. I have the Be-Free. I like the Be-Free a lot. A long tube. This isn't a bad thing. How about all those areas in the desert where you have those little pools of water in the rocks that collect in the rocks and stuff? And sometimes you can't get to it. You might with a kind of one of these aquarium type tubes, something to think about. I would stay away from the Life straw. Any straw type I don't like because you can drink at the source, but how do you fill your bottles? I guess you can drink it and spit in your bottle. That's kind of gross. You can use one of the straw types, but again, I don't like the straw type, whether it's the Life straw. Now, Life straw has bottles and things too, but the straw type I don't think is a great resource just for that reason. You could put dirty water in your bottles and use the straw to take it out that way, but for really the same size, get a Sawyer and you're fine with that. Chemicals, chlorine dioxide. That's the only thing. You can go to the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, and they have something called the backcountry water treatment. And it'll tell you what's effective and what's not. Boiling is effective. Chlorine dioxide is effective. Iodine is not effective for cryptosporidium and Chlorine is not effective for cryptosporidium either. So chlorine dioxide is your best bet if you're doing chemical. Then you need a little kind of baggie. You put the water in the baggie and you put a tablet in and you got to wait 4 hours and then you're good to drink. So that's the downside. That's why it's better, I think, to have a regular physical filter for something like that. You want to have as clean a water as possible so you don't clog up your filter. So yeah, some kind of pre-filter, but a bandana works really well too. Just pre-filter it. So what's the one thing that you don't want to do if you have one of these filters? Exactly. Don't let it freeze because that will compromise. This works based on a micron of pore size that the Giardia and cryptosporidium can't get through. As soon as it freezes, what happens to water when it freezes? It expands. Now those little holes are much bigger and they're not going to filter out the particulates of Giardia and cryptosporidium. So you don't want to let that freeze. Sleep with it. If you have a filter and you're on a backpacking trip and it's freezing at night, throw it in your sleeping bag. Don't let it freeze up. And even Sawyer simply says, we're not sure if it compromises the filter, but we recommend you get a new one if it freezes. So I think that kind of says it all for me, at least. And then there's the SOTIS method. They use that in a lot of third world countries where it's solar disinfection. If you have a real thin plastic bottle, it won't work with the Nalgene's, but the drugstore bottles and stuff, you can put them in the sun for, I think it's 4 hours, bright sunlight, and that kills everything as well. So that's really interesting. Look up SOTIS, S-O-D-I-S. But boiling kills everything. If you need to do that, if you don't have a filter, try and boil it. If you don't have a metal cup, what do you do? How do you boil water without a metal cup? Man, that's, what's that? Water, if you have a metal water bottle, you can. Plastic water bottle, you got to be pretty careful, but yes, we've done that. But you can also, what we do in the classes, a lot of times we take a yucca stalk and we scrape it out and put water in there, and then we take hot rocks from the fire, put it in the yucca stalk until it boils, until it's bubbling, and then that water is going to be safe to drink. Yeah, the double wall, like my water bottle, the insulated, they won't work. You got to have a single wall. Thank you for mentioning that. Single wall stainless steel or titanium. I have a titanium canteen that'll work, but it's got to be single wall because it's got to boil the water in there, not an insulated one. So different things, you know, the transpiration bag I talked about earlier, putting a bag and sealing it on some leaves and those kind of things will give you water. You don't get a lot. It depends on the tree. Willow seems to do really, really well, but once you found a willow, they're typically by water. So you don't need to do a transpiration bag. Just look around for the water. Oaks do okay. Oaks don't give you a lot, and you taste the tannins when you drink it, but it can work. Solar stills, I'm not a fan of solar stills because you dig them and a lot of times you get nothing out of them. I've done solar stills and sometimes you get a little bit, sometimes you get nothing. Sometimes all the sides, if it's soft substrate, just falls in. But with a solar still, it's interesting. You can make a solar still, which is that, you know, dig the hole in the ground, put the plastic over it. You can urinate in there. It'll distill your urine and make it safe to drink. Okay, because inevitably somebody asks if you can drink your urine. So I'd say distill it is better, you know, than just drinking it straight. Let's see what else. Yeah, so we talked about earlier, ration your sweat. If it's desert, if it's hot, you know, just kind of chill out during the hot day part, and then in the evening start looking for water and doing things like that. Don't be wandering around. So we talked about navigation, and with navigation, you know, learn how to use that compass. It's an important thing. There's a thing called a shadow stick method where I do this at the start of my class. We put a little stick in the ground, we mark the shadow of the stick over the course of about 45 minutes, every 15 minutes, and then it gives you an east-west line. Sun rises in the east, sets in the west, so your first shadow is going to be your west direction, and then your other shadow is east, but it gives you a good east-west line. Shadow stick is good. Then, if you're really into it, learn natural navigation. Here's a picture. I know probably you guys in back can't see this very well. This is a basketball in the morning in January, and it's got some frost on the basketball. All right, and so you guys in the back, I don't want to forget about you guys in the back, so just pass that over. And you guys can see here, just kind of pass it that way. So natural navigation.
People carry basketballs now.
This could be other things, but this is interesting because this is part of the learning process. Like, how do you learn natural navigation? Where do the spider webs occur? If you know your prevailing winds, spiders don't want to be in the wind. They make their webs on the lee side of the tree. So you know your prevailing winds are from the northeast, spider web's going to be on the opposite side of the tree. How about the tree roots? If you know your prevailing winds, the roots typically are more roots and higher in the prevailing winds because they got to keep the tree from tipping over from the prevailing winds, right? So that's early morning in January. Anybody have any guess about what direction you're looking based on that basketball? So if you look at the basketball, early morning, sun rises in January, what direction? Southeast, that's the correct answer. Southeast. So I'm looking at the area here on the basketball that doesn't have any frost. It's on my left. Southeast, I'm facing southwest. Pretty simple, right? So it's cool, get one of Tristan Gooley's books on natural navigation. Learn how to look at tree roots and spider webs and termite mounds and all that fun stuff. And it's just another hobby, another outdoor hobby that'll keep you in the outdoors and keep you motivated to keep out there. Okay, lastly is food, right? So we talk a little bit about food. You can go 3 weeks, you're going to be miserable, you're not going to be happy. But if you fast, if you're in a situation where you don't have food, the first couple of days are hard, and then from what I hear, it gets easier as it goes on. So if you're doing like a 10-day fast, after like the third day, it's not bothering you anymore. I've unfortunately been only able to manage 2 days myself, but it's one of those things where they say, talk to people that have done it, and they're like, it's fine. After 3 days, you're not really noticing it and stuff. But you're not going to have the energy you need and things like that. So, but food is a low priority. Carry some extra snacks. Carry things like beef jerky, things that are really easily compressed, Cliff Bars. I've always been told, I think it's good advice, carry a flavor you don't like so you won't be tempted to eat it if it's not an emergency. But just like first aid gear, if I forgot to mention it, make sure you keep up with your expiration dates, because I've got my survival Cliff Bar and then, oh yeah, that expired 2 years ago. So I guess that's good that I wasn't in a survival situation in 2 years, but make sure. So chia seeds work really well, beef jerky, pemmican. Then we get into, what else can we do for food? There's hunting methods that you can learn, primitive skills, how to snare animals, how to trap animals, and that's the chicken over there and the deadfall trap. I don't know if you guys saw that when you came in. It's just set up with sticks, and when the animal goes in, you'll base this up on a rock. There's some sticks here, and the animal's going to go in to get the bait and crushes the animal. So, but you got to learn how to carve the sticks. It's not hard to do. But then what are you going to do with the animal once you get the animal? Oh yeah, I killed an animal. I have no idea how to clean it. I don't know what to do with it. So yeah, if you want to learn those things, I suggest learning those kind of things. I think it's good to know. Then you'll learn, what plants are edible. Stinging nettle is probably one of the most nutritious plants out there. You'll learn how to pick stinging nettle and process it in your hands by rolling it like a cigar, and you can eat it straight, and it's really tasty and it's very nutritious. Don't eat it without rolling it though, because you'll get the stingers in your throat. Yes, so yes. So there's a lot of ways to carry a survival kit. And if we put in all the things we talked about, we addressed each priority, you put in what you're familiar with, what you know how to use, you address each priority with those things. I mean, you're not going to put, things in your medical kit that you don't know how to use, but put in what you know how to use. If you don't know how to do the fire steel, then put in 2-bic lighters and matches or whatever it is. But practice with those things, put those things in. How do you carry your survival kit? Well, if I'm on a day hike, everything should fit in my day pack, and there really should be no reason to be separated from my pack. This is a light pack, this is for day hikes, and I'm gonna put everything in here. The other thing I'm gonna add, and it's on did everybody get one of the handouts? It's in the handout. There's something called the 10 Essentials, developed in the 1930s by the mountaineers. There's a crossover with survival stuff, but they also talk about carrying sunscreen and sunglasses and headlamp, flashlight. Those are not things, I'm trying to address things that are going to kill you, but those are things that are good to have. So carry the 10 Essentials along with all your survival kit stuff. But for a day hike, if I put a water bottle here, I probably got everything I need here. But if you're backpacking, let me let me grab another kit here. If you're backpacking, and this happened to, right, that lady that left the Appalachian Trail and couldn't find her way back and she died. She went off to use the bathroom, left her pack. I think she left her pack, and then she wound up dying. They found her body years later. In any case, you go off the trail and you have a backpack, this is it. The survival kit's all here. And this is in a dry bag. And let me show you, just to give you an idea, this is just representation of the things that I would carry in a kit. I think we're gonna make it, people. All right. And the first thing I have on top of that is, this is a water bottle sling. You've probably all seen these at like the National Park Service gift stores and stuff. Well, if I have this, now if I have a water bottle in my pack, I can put the water bottle in here and sling it around my neck, and I have a water bottle with me. And then the other thing I have on top here is this guy here. Okay, this is just a strap with the little clips. You can clip it together, but because this is a dry bag, let me roll it back up. And I'll tell you the other advantage to the dry bag. So now I can sling that over the other. Now I've got my survival kit with me, and my personal one is longer than that. It doesn't strangle me, but you have the idea, right? So that's, and let me show you what's in the kit too. So the reason I do it in a dry bag is because you want to keep your survival kit contents dry if possible. You don't want them getting wet. So if I take everything out and I don't need everything, I can put stuff back into the dry bag and carry it with me. So the first thing you'll notice is a metal cup. This is just an aluminum. If you guys can afford titanium, get titanium. It's lighter. Okay, so now, and I do have a little list of the priorities, which I gave you guys on that handout, what should be carried in there. So if you kind of go down the list of priorities, let me take everything out of here, and then we'll see if we have addressed all the priorities. Okay, so first priority is hope, right? Family photo, okay? So I always carry the family photo with me. I know I've put on some weight since this picture, but family photo's gonna give me the hope I need. First aid kit, I have a tiny first aid kit in here with some aspirin. Aspirins are good to carry in case of heart attack. There's a little blood absorber in there, which this is actually a feminine product, but they absorb blood really, really well. There's some Benadryl. Go back to first aid real quick. Carry, if you do have allergies, especially anaphylaxis, if you don't have EpiPens with you, which you really need to have. But the Benadryl, the children's Benadryl, the chewable, or the melts get into your system a lot faster than swallowing a pill, so I have both in here. Aspirin, some Imodium. Imodium's really good to have. So basic first aid kit, right? And I have one of these plastic bags. It's kind of like the bread bag, similar kind of deal here. Now in this kit, not mine, I wouldn't carry this, but here's the emergency Mylar blanket, but just to show you what you could do in a real pinch there. So there's shelter. So I got first aid and shelter covered. Fire, there's those stormproof matches we talked about. There's a fire steel, and here's some cotton balls in a plastic bag that have petroleum jelly on them already. So I've got all the fire making stuff. I got a baggie with some chlorine dioxide, so I can boil water if I need to, or I can purify water with this. I have some gaffer's tape. I like gaffer's tape better than duct tape. It doesn't leave that sticky residue. Just my preference and what to carry. I have a knife which can help with processing wood for fire, which can help with making shelter. This little container here has some safety pins, which are good for repair items, has fishing hooks, has fishing, what do you call them, sinkers, hooks, and swivels. So a whole fishing kit's in here. The fishing line is in here. There's that little whistle, if you guys can see in there, little button compass, flashlight. So I've got all my priorities covered in this little tiny dry bag that I can throw, and this I would only use if I were going out on a backpacking trip and wanted a separate survival kit. If I'm going for a day hike, it's all in here already. This could work as a day hike bag very easily for most people. It's pretty small and it holds all the same things. Plus the 10 essentials that we talked about, having that sunscreen and stuff like that. Tweezers are on the Swiss Army knife, good to have. Yeah, good to have, but again, I'm going for more life-threatening stuff. Yeah, tweezers are definitely a good item to have. I mean, again, this is all representation. My kit's a little different, but it gives you the idea. You have all this in your handout, you know, what's each priority, address each priority, and you will have a complete survival kit, and that's me teaching you how to fish versus giving you a fish by saying, carry this, this, and this. Carry what you want to carry, just make sure you address the priority. Hopefully it was worthwhile for you guys. Spend a couple hours with me. My pleasure. Thanks for coming out.